may see your hand upon me and hear you talk.
This is one of those words today that by the time I finished it, I realized there was a prophetic edge to it. And so I'm hoping that the ladies, when they come back, they'll either get CDs or they'll watch this online, because I think it's one of those important ones. Of course, I feel that way every Sunday or I wouldn't even preach. So, Jesus, come speak to us today, God. Lord, our hearts are soft. We've worshiped you, we've prepared, we're ready. So God, pour this into us. Pour this into us. Lord, I'm looking for another step up. So take us by the hand and pull us to your side in Jesus' name. Lord reminded me that a number of years ago, I can't even remember how long, but a number of years ago I had a dream that I was in Mile High Stadium. I knew it was a prophetic dream. I was in Mile High Stadium. It was the old one before they built a new one that looks like a UFO landed, you know. It was the old one. And down on the field was a canopy that looked like a giant black tent that was covering everything, and it was shutting out all the light. And it was held in place by these pegs that were driven into the ground all around it. I remember lifting the edge of that to let in some light, and as I did, this tremendous blast of demonic opposition and power hit me. And then the battle was on in the dream after that. And I knew that I was supposed to lift that canopy. I was supposed to have something to do with lifting that canopy, because that canopy was, it was a symbol of what has held back the full release of the Spirit of God on the people of this city. The stadium represented, the city itself. We're the Mile High City. It was Mile High Stadium. At the time, I thought that the canopy was a canopy of demonically enforced unbelief. Today, I think it's more a canopy of slumber in the Spirit. And that results from a whole bunch of causes. And where you and I are right now today, the sun is shining. I mean, there may be a lot of slumber going on, but the sun is shining. It's time to wake up. But there's this dark canopy cast over the hearts and minds of a whole lot of the body of Christ, and it's keeping the light out, and it's keeping too many sleeping. I thought at the time I had the dream, I thought that the pegs that held it in place were made up of old wounds and old bitterness, but I think it's more of a blanket that's fed by broken dreams. I think it's more of a blanket that's fed by delay of promises. And hurts and wounds are part of it. And those need to be healed. And in fact, God is moving right now to heal those wounds for those who receive it. But the real issue is that dreams and hopes and longings have gone too long unfulfilled. I've lived in this city since 1991. I know the prophecies that have been spoken. And I know what the history is. And I know what people have struggled with. And I want you to know I'm not talking about everyone here today. Because not everybody here today is in that place of spiritual slumber. There are people sitting here today who are wide awake in the Spirit and full of fire, and you think if something doesn't happen, you're going to go nuts. You're going to burn up. But if you know somebody who's in this place that I'm talking about today, I want you to reach out. I want you to help them out of bed. Maybe shake them up a little bit with the Father's love and wake them up so they don't miss what God's doing. Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. This city and the world around us is filled with believers in Jesus who were once filled with passion, filled with excitement about what God was going to do, but now they're suffering from, I call it spiritual congestive heart failure, because so much just didn't unfold right away. And there's no blame in that. There's no condemnation in it. It happens, but it's time for them to heal. It's time for us to help them heal because God is moving. It's happening. We've been talking for weeks about this being a kairos season, that Greek word that means this is the season in which God is doing things. This is the time when He's moving, and you want to move with Him. You want to be part of it. The heart may be sick, but it's a time to heal. It's a time to recover. It's a time to wake up to wake up from what's been, tormenting, and wake up from the heavy sleep. And I don't know about you, but when I get sick, I don't feel God. I don't pray because I don't have the energy, because I don't like God very much when I'm sick. Matter of fact, if I pray when I'm sick, I pray, please, kill me now. And I'm not thinking spiritual thoughts when I'm sick. I'm not getting prophetic words. I don't hear God. All I want to do is enjoy the smooth, cool, refreshing touch of my friend, the toilet bowl, on my face as I kneel before it, gazing into the clear waters that I'm about to defile. Toilet bowl, you're my only friend. Thank you for the coolness. I mean, that's how I feel. So when the heart becomes sick because of delay or hurt or disappointment or disillusionment, your sense of God can be dulled. It can go dormant. You can go to sleep. It can be hidden or suppressed under this canopy of heaviness when maybe you don't feel like you can stir up the fire or the energy to go at it again. Maybe you even begin to question whether your experience of God was or is even all real. That move of God that we lived through, was it real? That rush of joy when you came to Jesus, now you're looking at it, you're saying, was that really real? Or in everyday life itself, that hope that you felt when you first graduated maybe from school and began to craft a future for yourself, and then things didn't turn out the way you thought they were going to turn out. Is it safe to hope again? Or is it better and safer just to stay under the covers and watch reruns of CSI? Or if you're really old, Bonanza. Or if you're really, really old, I Love Lucy. Or worse, toke that joint or take that drink. Well, when you're in that place, when you're slumbering in spirit, it's as if you long for the power and the love and the presence of God because that deep longing never goes away. But it seems like only these brief flashes of light get in. Sometimes the occasional breeze lifts the edge of the canopy and that little bit of light comes in. The pegs holding that canopy in place are several. One of them is just wounds. I mean, for some of us, it's wounds that are rooted in childhood experiences, maybe abuses, abandonments, betrayals, losses. For some of the rest of us, it's just life hurts, just from living life. That's the time your mate cheated on you, or your husband or your wife left you and broke your heart, or your family broke up, or a friend betrayed you, or a leader or a boss at work let you down or controlled you in some way, that kind of thing. You suffered a bankruptcy, you lost a house, maybe you've got a chronic illness. And after a while, that blanket settles. Maybe it was church wounds, when believers didn't act like believers, church splits, pastors who failed morally, times when the pastor or leaders turned their backs on things of the Spirit that you had signed on for and you ended up feeling kind of betrayed, times when there was more condemnation than there was grace. Maybe it was accidental wounds, it's what happens in life because you live in a fallen world, illnesses, deaths of loved ones, financial troubles that come because of some kind of disaster that cost you money, or a job loss, or a car accident. Or maybe it was unfulfilled hopes and dreams, or prophetic words that were spoken over you that never came to pass. Maybe it was the child that you hoped for that you could not conceive and it began to weigh on you, or the job you're stuck in and you can't find a better one, or the job you need and can't seem to find in the first place. And if you're really hungry for God, you're passionate to see revival take hold. And year after year, what you see is just hints and dribbles and a little here and a little there, but nothing really in fullness. And that blanket begins to settle. Or someone prophesied that you'd be healed of that chronic illness, and now it's years later and you're still hurting. Those are the kinds of things that make up the pegs that hold the canopy in place when those wounds don't get resolved or healed. And you might get mad at God. I've been mad at God. It's okay. No, I better not say that. I was going to say it's okay to cuss at God. I've done it. His response is, falls off his throne laughing. Are you through? Are you done now? Get that out of your system, did you? You might get mad at God. But more than likely, something in you just gives up and goes to sleep under the canopy. And that's right where the enemy of your soul wants you. That's when you can miss what God is doing when He's doing it. It happened to the disciples. I mean, better men than I am have fallen under this. It happened to the disciples. Jesus was crucified, laid in a tomb. In the Bible story shows us how wounded they were by the crucifixion of Jesus and by their failure when they saw Him crucified. They thought it was over. They hadn't been able to take hold or grasp what Jesus was telling them about the resurrection that would follow after the crucifixion and what it meant. They just missed that point. They were deaf to it because their hopes were pinned on a revolution. Their hopes were pinned on Jesus wearing a crown and ruling on earth and the Romans being driven out. And all of those hopes died when Jesus cried out, "It is finished." And He breathed His last. They had wrapped their lives around Jesus and what they thought He'd do. They'd pegged their hopes of personal glory and their hopes of glory for Israel on Him, and Jesus had been killed. And then worse, they all ran away like cowards rather than stand with Him. Peter, the strongest of them, had actually denied the Lord 3 times the night before just to save his own skin. And the whole thing, that wounding and that stress and that fear, the disappointment and the loss of hope produced 2 kinds of unbelief. There was unbelief that the resurrection of Jesus had actually happened, and unbelief in themselves because they failed. And so you get these Bible stories of doubt and unbelief. Even in the face of eyewitness testimony, there was doubt and unbelief. That's part of what it is to be asleep in the Spirit. And so what you get this, the women had been to the tomb, they'd seen an angel, they saw that Jesus was alive, they saw the empty tomb, and they ran back to tell the others. That was a kairos moment if there ever was one. And here's what happened. This is Luke 24, verses 10 and 11. Now they were Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, also the other women with them, were telling these things to the apostles. But these words appeared to them as nonsense, and they would not believe them. See, the crucifixion had opened this wound of grief and hopelessness, and it was so heavy, they refused even to believe those who had seen for themselves. Pegs of unresolved hurt holding in place a canopy of unbelief. And then you get Thomas, who even worse than the other disciples, wouldn't even believe the testimony of the male disciples who had seen Jesus with their own eyes. John 20, starting at verse 24. Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see His hands, the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into His side, I will not believe." After 8 days, His disciples were again inside. You think what a miserable 8 days that must have been for Thomas. Jesus came, the doors having been shut, and stood in their midst and said, "Peace be with you." Then He said to Thomas, "Reach here with your finger and see my hands, and reach here your hand and put it into my side, and do not be unbelieving but believing." And Thomas answered and said to Him, "My Lord and my God." So why couldn't he believe even what the others had seen? Why was that so hard? I believe it was wounds. I believe it was the disappointment of what looked like a failure. I believe it was what looked like the death of all of his hopes and his dreams. And so this canopy of suppression and heaviness rested on him. But God heals wounds. He restores the broken heart. And so you get Matthew 12:20. He said, "A battered reed He will not break off, and a smoldering wick He will not put out until He leads justice to victory." In other words, He will not stop. He won't let go. He won't let you go. He's blowing on us right now. Some of us are already burning brightly. You know what happens when the bellows get applied to a fire. It gets hot. Some of us are burning like that right now, but some of us have been feeling guilty maybe because we're that bent reed, or maybe we're just glowing coals. But the Lord is blowing right now, and He'll blow until we burst into flame, till we walk in glory. Now here's what I want to talk about some of the youth who are not here to hear me talking about them. A lot of people are saying, that the young will lead the way into revival, that they'll lead the way into awakening. In a sense, that's true. One big difference between the older and the younger is that the older of us, we've had more time to experience disappointments. We've had more time to experience hurts. We've had more time to bump into all those obstacles that life serves up. Us older ones, we've had more time to get tired. We've had more time to get discouraged. We've had more time to kind of give up in some ways and lie down and sleep. More time for dreams to die. More time for spiritual gifts to go into storage. But those gifts are still there. They're held in trust for us by the Father who loves us. Listen, the title of this sermon is Waking the Sleeping Giant. We are a sleeping giant. As a generation of believers, we are destined for greatness. A sleeping giant. Are you listening today? Hello. We're a sleeping giant. So how does the giant awaken? Well, when someone or group of someones, usually the young, when they get the fire, they just go out and they just do it. When that happens, they just do it. They haven't had time to accumulate what some of us have accumulated. So they just do it. And when that happens, it inspires and it awakens the sleeping ones, and God's people rally to the fight. It's just like Israel when they were cowering in fear before the army of the Philistines and before Goliath. King Saul was trying to pull a kingdom together for the first time. Israel had never had a king. And the Philistines had been ravaging them. They'd been coming and raiding their farms, taking what they wanted, raiding their villages. Philistines were a well-armed, well-organized group of people with a king. And Israel had no king. And you remember how the story went. They cried out, God, we need a king like the nations. And God gave them Saul. So King Saul, he's trying to pull this nation together for the first time. And against these Philistines, they had better weapons, better army, better fighting skills. Strength and faith for Israel, in my opinion, strength and faith had gone dormant in the face of all that obstacle and all that setback and all that feeling like they were less than everybody else. And so they're standing before this army of Philistines. And Goliath is coming out to challenge them every day. I'm guessing, from my measurements, that Goliath was 9 or 10 feet tall. Fearsome warrior. Incredible. And Israel's afraid. Goliath is challenging them. Send somebody to fight with me. And Israel is cowering in the hills. And then comes David. David is maybe 14 or 15. An army of Israel's full of older men. They knew and understood that they were outnumbered. They understood that Goliath, this 9 or 10 foot tall giant, was a threat nobody could beat. And it was the kind of thing that made the heart sick. Put an army of God's people into a state of what I'd call spiritual slumber. They were out of touch with the fullness of the greatness of God. Their history of being victims over the recent decades have put them there. And here's Goliath, this giant, standing out there all alone, full of confidence in himself. And Israel, the sleeping giant, is a people, a powerhouse, out of touch with the true source of their strength. Enter little David. And I say little David because he wasn't full grown yet. Revival's about to happen. He's a teenager. He's small. He's not even filled out. And he's bringing supplies to his brothers at the battlefront. And they make fun of him for being there. You're supposed to be taking care of the sheep, little brother. What are you doing here among the men? David hasn't lived long enough to be affected. He hasn't lived long enough to be worn down by the ravages of the Philistines through all those years when Israel had no king. He didn't know his limitations. And so David, young and yet unaffected by those storms of life, stands up to Goliath in faith and in passion and kills him with a sling and a stone. And that awakens the sleeping giant in Israel, and the army rallied to destroy the enemy. I want to read you the story, some of it. 1 Samuel 17, start at verse 45. Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you. And I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there's a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." I wonder if David's voice had changed yet. Can you hear this? "I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts." I mean, really. Verse 48 says, "Then it happened when the Philistines rose and came and drew near to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistines. And David put his hand into his bag and took from it a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. And a stone sank into his forehead so that he fell on his face to the ground. Thus David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. And he struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the slain Philistines lay along the way to Sha'araim, even to Gath and Ekron. The sons of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines and plundered their camps. Just one boy, a youth, David, not burdened by years of being beaten up and ravaged by the Philistines, stolen from by the Philistines, who were stronger than the Israelites. That one kid had the power to awaken courage and passion and hope and fire in an entire army that had lost hope. This is why revival usually starts with the young and spreads to the old. Because the old get beat up by the Philistines over and over and over again, and over time they can lose heart. But the young have not been infected by that. They don't know their limitations. They just launch. And then an army of seasoned warriors gets inspired. They get awakened to rise up and rock this world. We have an army of young Davids here. We have an army of young Davids in this church who will not listen to the taunts of the enemy. They will not bow to the discouragement of those around them. This is an army who will rise up in passion. They'll decapitate the enemy of our soul, and they'll awaken a larger army to follow. But that's not the whole story or the whole lesson. There's more to it. David's older brothers called him stupid. They called him arrogant. Who do you think you are? Come down here, dumb kid. To think he could stand up to Goliath, this huge, seasoned, trained warrior. You know what David's answer was? "Well, when I was defending the flock, I killed a bear." Yeah, right. That's like saying you can fight the Taliban or ISIS because you went bear hunting with a .30-06. Saul gets into it. King Saul, he says, "Okay, dumb kid, try your hand. But here, wear my armor." So David puts it on. He can't even walk in it. He's not full grown. He can't even walk in it. Small kid. So he went to face the giant with nothing but a stick and a sling and some stones. Victory started with one kid who had not experienced enough of life to have lost hope or to bow to his limitations, and that act ignited what had lain dormant under the pressure that an entire army of older warriors had felt. That is how God starts revivals. And when God starts a revival, he wants it to be on the order of Malachi 4, 5, and 6. Hearts of the fathers restored to the children, children to the fathers, generations standing as one in the Father's love. But there's a problem that has killed outpourings of the Spirit in the past. The older generation has a tendency to want the younger generation to wear its armor. like Saul dressing David in Saul's armor. But the young can't bear up under it. It doesn't fit them. It weighs them down. David couldn't walk under the weight of Saul's armor. He hadn't tested it. Neither can the young wear the armor of the old today. The Jesus movement from back in the 70s and the charismatic movement more than 40 years ago, both of them died out in part because they were separate. It wasn't a Malachi 4, 5, and 6 union of the generations. And they were separate because an older generation wanted the younger generation to wear their armor. And they couldn't do it. My generation couldn't do it. That generation wanted us to think and dress and act and worship and look and pray like our elders, and we couldn't do it. And the elders refused to change. We needed to fight with our own armor. We needed to fight with our own songs. We needed to fight with our own dress and our own language and our own slinging a stone. And so we went out and did it, and thousands of young people came to Jesus. It was up to the old to bond their hearts to us and to bend and change. But it didn't happen. That's why Malachi 4, 5, and 6 says, first the hearts of the fathers restored to the children, then the hearts of the children restored to the fathers. And so those two movements didn't last. Because God's last days plan before the return of the Lord is for a generational revival that includes all of us who still draw breath, living and standing as one. It's no mystery to me that my prophetic father started Elijah House in 1972 with a Malachi 4, 5, and 6 mandate to restore the hearts of the fathers to the children. That was an end-time action. And I still wonder what glory might have happened if the established church, when I was young, could have allowed its Davids in the Jesus movement to go out to battle in their own way and then rallied with them and changed and stretched themselves to move in a new day instead of making no. It's different. Today it's different. Things have changed. There's an army of young Davids in our midst. And we're not that generation of older people who were raised in an age of conformity, who were unable to embrace our Davids and rally to defeat the army of the Philistines. We're not like them. At least I don't think we're like them. Rewind through history, and you see Israel standing by the Jordan River, the desert behind them. Older generation of those who could not change were all dead and buried. They died over a 40-year period, all dead and buried. I prophesied years ago, the Jesus movement really took root. I mean, it started in 67, but it really took root in 69. And they had the student awakening at the International House of Prayer in 2009. That was 40 years, people. 40 years for a generation to die off. We're ready for a new revival. We're ready for a promised land. This is the time. And we're not that generation. So you see them standing by the Jordan River, this generation of younger people, after a faithless older generation had died off, 40 years. And you have Joshua and Caleb in their 80s, standing before them, still strong, ready to lead, ready to take the land that was promised. Just as strong as they were when they came out from Egypt, the statement, well, Caleb said it, because I followed the Lord my God fully. And there are Joshuas and Calebs in this room right now among us who are older. But as Caleb said, our strength is undiminished because we followed the Lord our God fully. You didn't fall asleep spiritually. You didn't give up in the face of delay. You didn't give up in the face of life's issues, and you're ready. And it's time now. Now, there are some among us who are asleep in the Spirit. There are some whose hopes and dreams and passions have been covered with this blanket, held down by pegs of hurt and discouragement and delayed promises. But I'm telling you, you're a sleeping giant ready to be awakened. God hasn't taken anything away. You are a sleeping giant ready to wake up. The Davids, the young who haven't been worn down by the crap of life here, Goliath means nothing to them. And unlike the generation of my parents, we, today's Joshua's and Caleb's, we can embrace change. We can embrace the young. We can walk in our own armor while we bless them for their slings and stones and their reckless courage. We can break the chains. I keep waiting to hear an amen this morning. I mean, really. Really. We can break the chains. We can wake from slumber. We can cast off that blanket of suppression. We can rock the world. And we can do it all the way from your bedroom at home to the city, the state, and the world. And that means we've got to look away from the things of this life that have consumed our attention. Things that have warped our focus, things that have pulled us down. We are changed from glory to glory by gazing into the face of Jesus. 2 Corinthians 3:18, we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit. And one of the principles I've learned is that what I choose to look at and what I choose to dwell on is what I'm going to become. And it can lift me up or it can take me down. Saul's army looked at Goliath and hid in fear. They became cowards because of what they looked at. Young David looked at God and went out and won. And so what I'm saying is that if we're going to do this, if we're going to be that end-time prophesied generation, then what's going to carry us forward is this radical focus on Jesus. And in that radical focus on Jesus, there's a union of the generations. Here's another one. Matthew 6, starting at verse 28. Why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. You know, when I was young, I didn't have to worry about a car payment because I didn't have a car. So I could focus. Didn't have to worry about the house payment. Should have seen the place Beth and I lived in. You want to hear about the place we lived in? Our first apartment. Young people have no idea today, I don't think, a lot of them. Our first apartment. No carpet. We get into the bed. We're like 3 weeks married. We get into the bed, and it goes like this. So the first thing we bought was a 4x8 sheet of plywood. The kitchen was so small, and the refrigerator door was broken, and the landlord wouldn't fix it. So we had a chair with a wedge, and it was so small, we would wedge that between the counter and the refrigerator door to keep the door shut. And there was a gap under the front door, and whenever it snowed, we'd have to take the snowdrift out of our living room, But we didn't worry about anything. Because all we had was school. We didn't have any debt. So why are you worried about all this stuff, is what Jesus is saying. And yet I say to you, verse 29, that not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today, tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Do not worry then, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles, that's the unbelievers, eagerly seek all these things. But your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Laser focus. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Worry is going to take you down. But focus on Jesus, gazing into who he is, being fascinated with him. That's going to free you to live the kingdom. And it's time. This is the moment. This is the season. Some of us have waited for it all our lives, and it is here. The Davids are full of fire, and the Joshuas and the Calebs are here, prepared by a lifetime of testing, and we're ready. There are those among us who need to hear this one again, Matthew 12:20. A battered reed he will not break off, and a smoldering wick he will not put out until he leads justice to victory. He's blowing on us right now. If you're a dimly burning wick or a broken reed, you are not rejected. It isn't over. It's only begun. It's only begun. It is time for the sleeping giant to awaken. It's time to cast off that suppressing blanket, pull up the pegs, and defeat some Philistines. Right? I'm going to do it. I'm doing it in my own life right now because I am not going to live. I am not going to live by the limitations I've labored under for most of my life. God didn't call me to that. He didn't call you to that. I am not done. If you can still draw breath, you can still carry a sword. Pick it up. I'm not going to submit to the lesser glory that the enemy of my soul wants me to believe is all there is. I will not settle. And what I know about Goliath is that he's an arrogant sphincter muscle who doesn't know what he's up against. And I don't need to feel strong to take him down. We need to get over that. I don't need to feel strong to take my Goliath down. I am strong, and so are you in the Lord who strengthens us. The Apostle Paul, I think, said it best. I like him a lot. He wanted his life issues resolved, just like you and me. Oh, please, God, take care of this. He wanted his ongoing physical affliction, whatever it was. He called it his messenger of Satan. He wanted it removed so he could feel strong. And you know what? God said, no, ain't doing it. Ain't doing it. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8, concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Isn't that a gentle way of saying no? Most gladly, therefore, I'll rather boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, here's something we need to learn. Therefore, I'm well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties for Christ's sake. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Now here's the message if it applies to you. Stop holding your calling. Stop holding the power and the love of God He would pour through you. Stop holding that hostage to your life situation or to your physical condition or to your emotional state or to any other so-called fact of life. If it applies to you, stop holding your breath and waiting for change. If you hold your breath long enough, you pass out. You know? God has already taken care of all that life stuff. That's what He said in Matthew 6:33. He's already taken care of it. It's already covered. We are therefore free to have that laser focus on Jesus in the kingdom. And if you focus on all those earthbound life issues, you're going to wait forever and the promise of glory will never come. Seek first the kingdom of God, and the sleeping giant in you, the sleeping giant in our church will awaken and the enemy will flee. The first church I planted up in Idaho, people used to get mad at me when I'd say things like this. They'd say, well, I can't go do anything for God. I have to get healed first. And I said, okay, when is that? When is that? You've been going to counseling for 10 years. When is that? How long are you going to wait? When is that? This room's full of sleeping giants. This church is a sleeping giant. You know what? God thinks we're bigger than we think we are. Because He's in us. He's with us. He's doing it. Train's leaving the station. And you want to be on it. It's time to awaken the sleeping giant. I believe that we have a critical mass here. You know what critical mass is, right? That's when something's ready to explode. That's when you put 2 elements together and they interact in a way that causes an explosion. So we have Joshua's and Caleb's, and we have an army of David's, and I call that critical mass. And so I'm calling some of us to wake up. And I think we need a ministry time today. I'm going to go up and just close with a song, but we need a ministry time today. And it's a ministry time for those who say, you know what, I want to wake up. I want to pick up, I'm a Joshua, I'm a Caleb, and I want to wake up. I want to carry my sword. I want to be as strong in my latter days as I was when I was young. And we're going to defeat these Philistines and leave their dead bodies, from here to the coast. Amen? Sound great? Some of you young people, I want you to be a ministry team today, would you?
Father, I see your hand upon me, and hear you touch me.